The Cincinnati Bengals 2025 NFL schedule has been released this week alongside the other 31 NFL teams this season. As we know, we knew their opponents. We didn't know the time slots. There's how many primetime games they would have, how many 1 o'clock games they would have. They would end up with 4 games at 8, a couple more around 4, ending up with what I would call 7 primetime games. I say primetime even 4 o'clock games because the game of the week, 4 o'clock. Typically, even last year was going head to head with Sunday Night Football as the most watched football game during the week. Surpassing Monday Night, Thursday Night Football is obviously being more cable programs being streamed, not getting the viewership. Sometimes competing, but not quite the viewership. So yeah, 4 o'clock to me, the NFL is looking at that as a primetime slot. They're looking at this is the game that's getting the most eyeballs. This is a pristine spot. With all that being said, the Bengals will walk into the season with 7 primetime football games this season. But what is sticking out to most fans, a lot of people right now, is the fact that the Cincinnati Bengals will play 4 games, 4 years in a row in Baltimore, under the lights, primetime football. Meanwhile, they will play 4 games in Paycor Stadium in Cincinnati under the sunlight at 1 o'clock. 4 straight years, 4 o'clock, 4 straight years, 1 o'clock games in Cincinnati, 4 straight years, primetime games in Baltimore. Gaining a lot of traction. What is the NFL going after the Bengals? What are they trying to prove here? And in this regard, I can understand the frustration. I see exactly why fans are not happy with this one. I mean, that's your division rival, or that's the team you have to get through. It's the team you've struggled mightily to get through. I don't think, if I'm a Bengals, honestly, if I'm a Bengals fan, I could care less. Figure out how to beat Lamar Jackson. It don't matter if it's daytime, nighttime, middle of the summer, middle of the winter, 6 inches of snow undergone, 6 feet of water. It doesn't matter. For whatever, the Bengals cannot figure out Lamar Jackson. Figure out Lamar Jackson and come back to me. If the Bengals start going 4-0 at home in 4 years, 4 straight years against Baltimore, and then you're 4-0, 0-4 on the road against Baltimore, yeah, you got something to talk about. Right now, to me, it feels like an excuse or something to talk about. Worry about beating the Ravens. That being said, though, from a schedule maker standpoint, you do have to question it. You do have to look and say, hey, because Baltimore's not going to Germany this year. The Bengals play on week 13, week 15. The difference in playing a non-division team is versus a division team is you play them twice a year. It is very easy to swap those 2 days around. Like, hey, if you play week 13 in Baltimore, week 15 in Cincinnati, maybe week 15 you got, I don't know, Chiefs Bills that you want to have on prime time. Maybe you got big matchups. So you're saying, hey, we're going to keep you at 1 o'clock. Sure, you can say that. But there's no excuse to say, okay, let's take that week 15 game, put it in Baltimore. Let's take that week 13 game, put it in Cincinnati, so Cincinnati can have the primetime game. That is obviously where the dilemma is, opposed to, you look at, say they was playing the Lions, for example, this season. Maybe there you say, okay, you got some big matchups. Maybe you have 49ers Cowboys. Maybe you have Chiefs Bills. Yeah, already taking up those 2 time slots. So now you're looking, okay, I see why the Bengals Lions might not be able to make it. And you're only going to play that team once every 4 years or once every 3. Now that you have longer or more games in a season, maybe less than that. But for the most part, you already have those opponents are predetermined. Your opponent's going to, this is what's important about the schedule making process. Your opponents, aside from where you finish in the division, aside from your 3-4 games outside of the standard, you're going to play your division 6 times. You're going to play this division 4 times. You're going to play this division 4 times. And your entire division is going to have that exact same schedule. Besides that, everything, those are all the games set in stone. Then, of course, your first place team is going to finish and go ahead and play other first place teams. Your second place team is going to play other second place teams. That's where your schedules are slightly different. So for the most part, your opponents, your home, your away, all that's predetermined going into this. The schedule makers are just looking at this and saying, hey, what kind of time slot can we put on these games? What week can we put these games? Important because, again, there is only so much you can do. It can look bad sometimes saying, hey, the Bengals are going to play, this season, 5 games on the road in primetime, 2 at home in primetime. But maybe if, for example, maybe Caleb Williams and company balls out last season and actually looks like a competent football team. Now the Bears are good. Now you have a reason to say, okay, the Bengals play the Bears at home. Maybe that shouldn't be a 1 o'clock game. Should it be a 1 o'clock game now? Absolutely. Here's the teams the Bengals play this season at 1 o'clock at home. The Jaguars, the Jets, the Steelers, the Bears, the Patriots, and, of course, the important one is Baltimore. You look at that schedule, though, they shouldn't be playing any of those at home in prime time. Sometimes that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Sometimes that is just the way the things line up. Again, maybe the Patriots go out there and their young rookie stud quarterback, and May goes out there, balls out last season. Now the Patriots are good. Okay, now we have a reason to talk about the Bengals. They should have a primetime game there. Maybe the Steelers put together a competent offense for the first time in 10 years. Okay, that should be a primetime game. Doesn't happen now. You can't force those games into primetime. You don't put bad teams. Because if you look at those games and say, hey, at the end of the day, if the Bengals are a good football team and they're serious about winning a Super Bowl, they should blow half those teams out. Nobody wants to watch a primetime game as a blowout. Look at last year, 2024, same story. The Bengals had 3 at home, 4 on the road, pre-flex scheduling. You know, they ended up throwing that Broncos game in later in the year in the flex, obviously, at 425. But before that, the Bengals would have 3 at home, 4 on the road. And here's the home games they did not play in primetime. You had Baltimore, of course. You had the Raiders. You had the Steelers, and you had the Browns. And again, you see why we just brought it up. The Steelers are not a fun football team to watch in primetime. The Browns, for whatever reason, the Bengals can't figure them out. Sometimes they dominate the Browns. Sometimes they get blown out. There's a lot of ugly football games. Ugly football games, not good for primetime. I understand why that's not a primetime game. So if you really look at the schedule, who they play, it makes sense for the most part what's happening here. In the meantime, if the NFL started saying, okay, you're going to play the Chiefs on a road 6 straight years, if you were to look, but they don't play that way. The schedule is made to flip-flop back and forth. You know, you play this division this year, 4 years from now, you'll play them again. 3-4 years from now, you'll play them again. You'll play them on the road this time, you play them home last time. That's typically how the schedule works. And as long as that's consistent, you can't look back and say, well, what's the NFL doing? I think what's interesting about this as well is that the NFL hates the Bengals so much. The schedule makers are trying to bend the Bengals over backwards so much. The Bengals are going to walk into this season with 7 games out of the 15. The last 2 games of the season, no times determined yet. They keep that at flex scheduling. That way they can interlock, put in the games they want late in the season. So 7 of the 15 time slots the Bengals have already determined are primetime games. Nearly half. You know how difficult that is? The Bengals were lucky to get 7 primetime games in 2 or 3 years 7 years ago. If the NFL was out to get the Bengals, they would not be playing 7 primetime games this season, opposed to, again, the favoritism that they supposedly show the Ravens, who the Ravens, by the way, play 6 games in primetime. Think about that. Bengals haven't touched the playoffs in 2 years. 3 years, 2 years. And Baltimore, meanwhile, has been a perennial conference champion, a perennial division winner. Or I shouldn't say conference champion, conference appearancee. And they're playing less than the Bengals. At the end of the day, the NFL cares about one thing. They care about making money. And sure, you can look at the Baltimore Bengals thing and say, well, this is one way they can make money whilst also screwing the Bengals over. Sure, if you want to say that, we can. I can understand that logic. But from a broader perspective, the NFL cares about making money. Who brings in viewership? Joe frickin' Burrow. Because every game the Bengals played last season, every game the Bengals play, it seems like against these good football teams, is exciting football. Some of the most watched football during the season. People love watching this Bengals offense. People love the high-scoring games. The NFL tries, there's a reason they try to make it an offensive league. One thing is for certain, the NFL folks confident about, as long as Joe Burrow's understanding the Bengals in primetime is must-watch television in the NFL once again. And I think this is important. As long as the Bengals are in primetime, you have to look more at if they're in primetime versus not in primetime versus is it home or away. Because at the end of the day, as long as they're in primetime, they're getting eyeballs, they're getting viewership. If you're on primetime 7 times a year, that means more fans can come in outside of Cincinnati and watch half your games that season, become Bengals fans, grow up as a kid, become a Bengals fan. The more fans you have, the more money you generate, the more fans you put into the stadium, the more it helps out the Bengals organization, the Bengals team in general. As long as they're on primetime. That's important. For that reason, I try not to look too deep into it. I think you got to be grateful the Bengals have as many games as they do on primetime. The NFL, to me in general, is not trying to hurt the Bengals. They're just, again, worried about what's going to make them the most money. The Bengals are so worried about, I don't think they are, but if we're so worried about the Bengals playing, where the Bengals play against Baltimore, maybe they should first worry about, once again, figuring out how to stop Lamar Jackson, figuring out how to beat the Ravens, figuring out how to win in the division. It's going to be difficult for schedule makers, and there's a reason the Bengals division games aren't on primetime. It is going to be hard for for the schedule makers to contemplate forcing these Bengals games into primetime when they see year in and year out they get embarrassed by the division. They have a hard time beating the division. Start winning those games. Start making them intriguing. See what they do. Nonetheless, love the y'all's thoughts. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.